श्वेत है धाम, तेज पुंज सत्पुरुष है, तह हंसन विश्राम।
VYGOS is Vihangam Yoga Global Online Satsang, which is scheduled every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Those who would miss to attend the morning session can listen to the broadcast replay on Sunday evening at 4:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. The aim of this forum is to give the entire world an opportunity to learn the ancient science of meditation and benefit from this pious service inspired by Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj, the pioneer of Vihangam Yoga. If you are interested in learning the technique or want to conduct a program at your place, and for any inquiry related to it, please feel free to write to us at info@vihangamyog.org. That is info@vihangamyoga.org.
Jai Sudev, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Vihangam Yoga Global Online Satsang. I myself am Avinav, joining from Sydney. For those of you joining us for the first time, a warm welcome. For those of you who return once more, we thank you for your ongoing support. First of all, I hope everyone's had a great week. With December around the corner, I'm sure many of you are looking forward to some hard-earned time off and some rest before launching into the year that will be 2020. I know I am. In our previous VOGUS session, we discussed the 4S framework: Seva, Satsang, Sadhana, and Swadhyaya. If you were unable to catch the session due to some of the technical quirks you ran into last week, please do check out our YouTube channel for a past recording. We do apologize for the troubles we had there, and we're just grateful that you've joined us again. We're being super careful from this week onwards, so thank you for your patience in that regard. And Seva is a word which encompasses a way of living, and it's very difficult to unpack it without losing the essence of what it really represents. If you were to try to do so and really capture what it feels like, it's sort of like doing something for someone without seeing yourself in it. And of course, there's a lot of complexity and subtlety involved in that. And if we try to translate into English, we get to a phrase which loosely translates to selfless service. And this is the part of the 4S framework, which we'll be diving into today. And some of the things we'll be thinking about, which I know I've been thinking about over the past week as we've been, putting this together is, what does it mean to be selfless? Who are we referring to when we say self? What is the impact of selfless service on the receiver and on the giver? How can we be selfless in a hyper-mechanized and almost self-centered technological world? Well, today, equipped with our global panel, we'll be diving into this very topic through the lens of the ancient-most science of spirituality and through the medium of the Swadvid, a distillation of the experiences of Ananda Sri Sadguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj on his most unique and complete journey through the depths of spirituality and beyond. As we go through, I'll be extending a warm welcome to our speakers, but before we dive into this week, let's stop for the welcoming prayers, the Swagat Gan and the Mangal Gan. These are prayers offered in the feet of the master of Vihangam Yoga and its internal science and wisdom. Let's invoke the blessings of the master on this auspicious occasion and dive into this week.
आज स्वागत नित्य गुरुवर संत शुभागम आइए, अध्यात्म विद्या दिव्य ज्योति सोमरस बरसाइए। दोष दुर्गुण दूर करके शुद्ध हंस बनाइए, भेद गम गति ज्ञान गर्जन शक्ति द्वार हटाइए। खुले द्वारा शब्द सागर भक्त जन अनहवाइए, जन सदा फल विश्व शिक्षक, शान आन बताइए, शान आन बताइए। विश्व शांति नाम मंगल, परम गुरु को ध्याइए, वर्ग द्वंद्व शांति दूर कर, भाव भेद मिटाइए। सार्वभौम समष्टि सत्ता त्यात्मराज बनाइए, वेश भाषा भाव जगमय ज्ञान पर दर्शाइए। समृद्धि सुख शांति धरातल, स्वर्ग भूमि बनाइए, विश्व शिक्षक जन सदा फल, नीति स्वर अपनाइए, नीति स्वर अपनाइए।
Thank you for that beautiful composition. With the blessings of the Master, we're now equipped to dive further into our topic for the day, Secrets from Svarved, realizing the genius within using the 4S framework. The first, S, Seva, Selfless Service. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts to share, we have two avenues available to you, Slido and WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is just coming onto your screen now, and the Slido link, slido.com/VYGOS, will soon be on the screen as well. As we go through this week and we have our conversation for the day, if you have any questions or thoughts you want to share, please do put them on either of these platforms. We'd love to work through these with you. Now we move towards a bhajan, after which, with that energy, we'll be diving into a Q&A session for the day. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Ram Avtarji from India, who'll be sharing a small bhajan with us, after which we'll be joined by Leelaji from Italy and Vijaji from the US for our Q&A session. So over to you, Ram Avtarji, and then let's go toward our Q&A session for the day.
स्वरूप निज चीनी के, बंद जग तोड़ी के, अपने लोक को चलो ए भाई, अशोधि अष्ट चक्र को जाओ ब्रह्मांड में, शून्य में ज्योति तहाँ जगमगाई, चांचरी भूचरी अगोचरी छाड़िक, उन मुनि खेचरी पार जाई, ररंकार ओमकार सोहम छूटे, शक्ति को त्यागी सत शब्द पाई, पोल उघारी के मकर डोरी धरो, ब्रह्म विभुद्युति को देख जाई, पुरुष स्वरूप की कौन महिमा कहूँ, सूर्य असंख्य तेजो लजाई, वाही को पाइया ताप जग छूटिया, मुक्त होय आनंद पाई, कहें सदा फल भेद दुर्लभ लहे, कोटि में जोहरी एक पाई, Sadguru Sridhar Devji Maharaj addresses his disciples that they must realize their pure self as a soul and follow the path of self-realization taught by the great Vihangam Yoga, brought and bestowed in this present world among us lucky ones by the great Sadguru Sridhar Devji Maharaj himself. Swamiji says that all of us should break the chains and limitations that ties us and hold us back from following the path of self-realization, which would enable us to realize and reach the ultimate state of consciousness. Swamiji says, within our body we have different energy centers, so-called chakras, as stated as Muladhar, Swadhisthana, Manipurvak. Such in order of 8 chakras are overcome within the internal journey by following the path of Vihangam Yoga. A technique and a scientific process of meditation which helps the yogi to reach the state of Brahmand, which is also the area above neck. Swamiji says, within this Brahmand, the yogi then covers a path of 5 places or spots which are having 5 distinct lights of its own. The great yogi Sadguru Sri Sridhar Devji Maharaj preaches all his disciples to pass through these stages of 5 lights, commonly addressed as mudras, the so-called chachri, bhujri, agochri, and then the yogi should bring his consciousness to the door of Brahm, the Dasham Dwar, the Brahmarandra, and even rise beyond that. Swamiji addresses to his disciples that through this door of Brahmarandra, one can leave behind this materialistic world and reach to the sounds of cosmos, leaving behind the Niranjans, the Om, the Soham, the Shakti and the Nirankar, and that a Vihangam yogi should finally submerge in the Satya Shabd, the Sachidanand, the ultimate bliss called God, and experienced by the most ancient science of Vihangam Yoga, the conscious light of the Supreme Being. Swamiji says that the 10th door within our body, referred as the Dasham Dwar, should be opened by following the path and the teachings of Sadguru, and holding the string attached to the heart which connects the cosmos, also addressed as the Makar Dori. One can reach the Supreme Soul. Once the soul connects with the experiencing cosmos and the Supreme Being, also referred as Brahm, the soul starts to realize the cosmic light within itself. Swamiji says that there are no words or limits to describe this bliss of cosmic consciousness. Even the light which is emitted by 1000 sun, would be less in comparison to this. Attaining the state and meeting the Supreme Being helps a yogi to overcome all and any type of concerns in their life, irrespective of materialistic or from spiritual aspect. The soul is liberated from all the bondages and attains the freedom referred as salvation or mukti. Swamiji concludes by saying that this path of Vihangam Yoga is known and followed by a very few, and compare these followers of Vihangam Yoga as jewelers who know how to identify a true diamond. In a similar way, a yogi of such stature would know what pure Vedic science of yoga would understand and would know the aspects of Vihangam Yoga accordingly. Thank you. Jai Sadgurudev.
Jai Sadgurudev, everyone, and thanks a lot for this opportunity. So, here are a few couplets.
Thank you, Ramji, for that very detailed explanation of a very interesting bhajan. It's really these last 17 minutes are a great example in how even the shortest bhajan can compress many different concepts and many different spiritual journeys and milestones into one. And I think Ramji, you've done a fantastic job in trying to bring those things forth to our listeners who are curious about the depths of spirituality. So thank you for joining us again today. We're honored to have you on board. Now, I'm sure everyone's got a lot of questions coming up in mind. Well, now's the time. As we mentioned, we've got slido.com/VYGOS, which is just coming on your screen now, and the WhatsApp number, which is just coming on your screen in just a second. So both of these are available to you wonderful listeners to put any questions or thoughts you have down. We'll be working through them today. And with this wave of energy, let's dive into our Q&A topic for the day. The secrets of Swadhyaya, realizing the genius within using the 4S framework. The first S, Seva, is our focus for the day. So we're joined today by two distinguished speakers, Vijay from the US, who has been involved with the Hungam Yoga for a very long time. Is currently a software engineer by profession, and we're very lucky to be joined by him. We're very lucky to be joined with him today. Leela Ji as well is joining us. She is a ardent seeker and has a very unique spiritual journey, which has traversed many years, and she's finally landed on the path of the Hungam Yoga, and she's been teaching many people as a primary kind of teacher in Italy as well. So I'd love to welcome both of you to this platform. I hope you can both hear me very clearly. So Vijay, maybe we could start with you. Today we've got an interesting discussion on Seva and on this idea of selfless service. And in spiritual philosophy, it seems that this word of self comes up a lot. We hear about self-enlightenment, we hear about self-realization, we hear about selflessness. What is the self? Just so that we can start to build the groundwork for our conversation. Maybe you could just explain, in a spiritual context, what do we mean when we say self?
Thank you, Abhinayji, for having me here. And it's always a pleasure to be part of this very, very, now famous forum throughout the world, VYGOS. I'm really feeling proud to be part of it. So what is self? For different people, self has a different definition because it depends on what they understand about the self. Somebody look at their own body in front of the mirror and they consider that entire body as the self. For somebody who is very spiritual in nature, they will say that self is even some further within, which is beyond the body, beyond the mind, a conscious spirit called the soul. So depending on the context, now we can understand self can take different meaning, but yes, in true sense, the self is the conscious spirit which is residing within the body.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point you've made there, which is, everyone has a different experience of this concept. And I think, as people are, let's say, reconnecting with what the ancients have left us, I think we've started to understand better that, the more still we become, the more subtle we become, the more elevated our sense of self becomes. And, gradually, we can start to understand what these words like self consciousness and self awareness, self control, what these all mean. So yeah, that was a very fantastic explanation. And Leela ji, I hope you're able to hear me. I'd love to hear from you as well in terms of, what is your concept of self, and how has that changed over time, perhaps with your different experiences through your spiritual journey. How have you kind of determined what, or started to understand this concept of self better? So I just want to appreciate that Leela ji is in a very remote part of India right now. She's flown over for a very important event, and I believe it's a little difficult for her to hear us. So perhaps until we reach that point where we can have a conversation, let's continue discussing Vijay ji. So we started on the idea of self, and we're discussing what the self means, and you just explained, and now we've got this idea of selflessness. So what does it mean to be selfless, and is it possible to be selfless? You've explained what the self is. Does selfless mean we form a boundary between who we are and the world? Like, what does selfless mean?
Sure, and looks like our sister Leela Devi ji was trying to speak here, but yeah, I think she may be remote. The question is very apt for understanding how this being selfless truly will benefit us, what selflessness is intended to benefit us. Because unless we understand what truly selflessness is, we would not reap the real benefit which is intended to explore the genius within us through being selfless. So what is selflessness? If somebody identifies the self with the mind and the body, then for them the selflessness will be to divert their attention from the mind and body to something else. If somebody considers the soul, the body, the mind, everything together as self, then again for them the selflessness would be having concerns for somebody else, not your own body, not your own mind, not your own spirit, but you are concerned for somebody else. That is what is to be to be selfless. So you become identity of selflessness if you are an entity of benevolence. All you think and you're concerned about is for others wish, for others desire, not your own.
Yeah, and I think you brought two very important words out there, which is self and the other. And even if we look at literature, this concept of the other and otherness and the outsider, it's been explored through time, and I think it's very interesting how in the spiritual philosophy, we identified that there is an otherness. There is people beyond us, but we see a common humanity between ourselves and the people who we interact with. And I think from that kind of sense of commonness, as you just mentioned, VAG, comes this sense of benevolence and this sense of compassion and love. And as we're starting to discuss this further, I'd love to understand from you, VAG, until we get Leela G online. What is an example of selfless behavior in your view? How can we as listeners start to really understand this concept better? What is an example of selfless behavior?
Yeah, so when your intention is not to expect anything in return in any form of actions or behavior that you do, that is where the selflessness is being reflected. For example, if you're passing by a road, you're jogging over there, and you saw an old age people trying to cross the road, and finding it hard because of the heavy traffic, and you just extend your help, without expecting even a thank you from that guy, because just out of your mercy you went ahead and just help that aged person to cross the road. That's a way of showing your selfless etiquette.
Yeah, like definitely. And it's very interesting that this Eastern concept of selflessness is so at odds, it seems, with the world we live in today, where it seems like social media and technology and everything is encouraging us to center the way we present ourselves around ourself, and to push who we are in front of other people, whether it be for better or worse. And I think you've mentioned a great example there of not expecting anything in return. And the next question I had to ask was, what is the impact of selflessness on the person who is, let's say, enacting selfless behavior, and on the person who is receiving it? You've just mentioned that we shouldn't expect anything. Would it be accurate to say the impact of selflessness on a person who is being selfless should be nothing, and the person who's receiving it should have a positive impact?
Yeah, this is very subtle now. Of course, the person who is the beneficiary of selfless act is definitely going to be empowered more than what he can do, or not only empowerment but also convenience. Sometimes we we don't bother others by controlling our emotions, so that also is a kind of service to that fellow. So of course the beneficiary is always at gain when the selfless act is performed. But the guy who is performing the selfless act, if you want to measure what he got in return in terms of material or any other measurable entity, the gross entity wise, you won't be able to figure it out. You would really feel that yes, this guy truly did a selfless act. But is it, if we go further deep, if you attach self being the spirit, then we, in that subtle understanding, what we get is the right now our spirit is very tied up with the false identity, and untying the spirit from the identity of the body and mind, and the greed of the body, greed of the mind. You're so much tied to the lust, the anger, the the greed, the emotions. There are different kinds of bondages which is disturbing the self that we are. So by performing these kind of selfless act, what the spirit gets is they are able to untie from these different diversions, because they just lose they just stop feeding the fuel to the lust, the ego, and the other evils of mind by doing the selfless act, because all they do is for others, not to feed these evils of the mind. So that's how at least soul makes themselves itself stronger than the evil of the mind, and is able to fight against them by performing such kind of selfless act.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. And as we start to put all this together, We talked about selfless and a bit about service, and when we put them together, we arrive at Seva, and the main focus for the day, which is Seva, the one of the main components of the 4S framework. And I think we've started diving into it further and further. Um, you know, how would you say that Seva is defined or brought forth in books like the Swarved? How is it defined by the master, by spiritual seekers? Is it does it contain all these aspects of selflessness, or is there more to it?
In fact, it has more to it. When you talk about seva that is discussed in Swarved, there is still one thing which is a botheration for the self in such so-called selfless act. For example, if somebody chooses to go on the street and start helping a poor or the underprivileged folks, there is high chance that because the I is involved in all the selfless act that you're doing, there's a high chance that you will feel attached to either your action or the people who are beneficiary of your action. You will most likely strengthen your emotional disturbances when you are owning your own act. So Sarved takes the selfless service even to the next level. Sarved teaches the formula of even disowning your act. By what means? By saying that it is not you who are doing this, but it is the master who is doing this, and you are just his hand and leg. You are just obeying the commandment of the master for performing all these selfless acts. So you're not even the owner of your action. By taking your selfless act to this great level where you attach only to your master, not to your action, takes you even further in the level of detachment from all different sort of disturbances, including the emotional disturbances. This is where Svarved, truly define the forest framework, which if one imbibe in life as it is stated in Svarved, you will attain the genius which is just within you.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful message as well, because I was actually talking to one of my fellow seekers just a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how in difficult moments of life we found that when we empty ourselves and let our master, our guide, be the person who moves us towards something, and we get rid of let's say ourself, then we've often found in our personal experiences that those very dark times become full of light, and they become very much easier to navigate. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head there in terms of capturing that feeling of being guided, and being moved towards something, not by just your own concept of the world, but by what the all-knowing master also has to obviously provide you in your life. And the next thing I wanted to touch on in respect to that was, why is Seva considered a pillar of spiritual growth and development? What is it about Seva that helps us grow as spiritual seekers?
See, the spirituality is, if you talk about what we want to attain in spirituality, the problem right now is that the treasure is just within us, but our attention is outside. So this attention has to be inverted from outside to inside. this is not happening. Even though we hear it 1000 times, we still spend our entire day lost into materialistic thought and chasing one or the other materialistic desires without paying the needed attention to the inner journey. The reason is very simple. When the magnet is, within, when let's say the iron pieces are within the field of a magnet, of course the iron pieces will get pulled towards the magnet. The only way to escape from this pull is to either shield it so that it does not freely get attracted towards the magnet, or take it away from the field of the magnet itself. So what selflessness or the selfless service or the seva in, as discussed in Swarved, does to us is it shield us from all different magnetic fields which is around us in the terms of 5 different subjects. We are getting the visual disturbances, we are sometimes getting attachment with uh, some taste, some smell, some sound, different kind of attachments which are nothing but the cause of disturbances for our mind. We are trying to focus on one thing, we are trying to channelize our entire system of our mind and intellect and chitta and the spiritual energy, our consciousness, everything towards a particular goal. But while we channelize our energy, all of a sudden the mind jumps off and gets attracted into something else. This causes the slowdown in achieving certain thing that we want. So it's the loss of our efficiency, and it is also a diversion of the attention that we want to get to. We want to go inside and want to touch the genius which is just very inside us, but before we reach there, mind pulls it to outside subject. This is all happening because of the raga, the attachments. So by doing selfless service, you are basically, it is something like this, that if somebody is a drunkard and if he is already drunk, then the only way to bring him to the normal state is stop feeding him drinking, stop feeding him the drink. If he keeps drinking before he gets normal, of course he will never get normal. So the only way is to not drink for certain duration of time, so that he gets, his blood gets the normal level of alcohol, and then he feels normal. The vishaya, the subject outside, is also something which is toxicating for the soul. The soul is, intoxicated with the subjects that the mind is feeding all the time, and it is happening only because it is always concentrating on those different attachments that the mind has developed. So by being selfless, by being in seva, you start ignoring your own desire, you start ignoring, because you don't pay attention to yourself, you are paying attention to somebody else. So you stop feeding the fuel to your lust, your ego, your the greed and the different, or all different evils of the mind. You stop feeding the fuel to it, and that is how you start gaining a normal state of restfulness within you. So to really progress in the spiritual journey, the foundation is to be in the selfless service all the time. If you stop doing service and you think that you can succeed in becoming a better human being, becoming a human being who can control the mind, who can progress in the inner spiritual journey of meditation, um, it's just not possible. You have to be in the ship of seva, in the ship of service, to progress in the journey of spirituality. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's such a great message. And you've really brought forward what the positive and what the main impacts of seva is on a person. And I think one of the questions which I think many of our listeners have is that, you know, if we become completely selfless, then how do we balance that with being, you know, respectful towards ourselves? So, you know, as an example, if a person is taking advantage of us and we continue being selfless, we continue helping that person, you know, at what point and what are the principles in spirituality which help us determine or to navigate that scenario where, you know, we are being selfless because of our nature as, you know, a spiritual seeker, but the world is being, let's say, unfair to us.
One thing is for sure that it is also a crime to support a crime. So when somebody start taking advantage of yourself, you know, ideally the selfless service creates positivity in the ambience. But if somebody is already evil who is taking advantage of you, you know, you would start feel a negative vibrations between you and the fellow who is the recipient of your action. That negativity will start, your soul is capable to experience it. You will start feeling within you that something is going wrong. So when your the positive feeling is going away in the selfless act that you're doing, you can feel it for yourself that something is going wrong, and you would automatically, you know, not feel stop feeling for rendering that selfless act to that fellow. So it is very natural, I cannot express it in word, but if you are right, if you are very righteous from within, your soul will always reject the thing which is not in favor of the purity.
Yeah, that's a very comforting thing to know because, you know, as people who are trying to progress on this path in, you know, a very, let's say, complex modern environment, it's comforting to know that we have these intuitions within us and we just have to tap into the inner intelligence we have. And, you know, we've kind of discussed why Seva is so important, but how does one perform Seva? You know, there's this concept in the modern world that the only way to do Seva is to donate money, is to help the underprivileged. You know, what does spirituality define as Seva? Like, what is an act of Seva by the Svarved or by the principles of Vihangam Yoga? How can we do Seva?
Yeah, this is very deep actually, because you know, seva as we understand is not only to serve the needy one, the poor one, but seva is also a way of giving respect to others. In the sense, if you have somebody who you respect and they they command you to do something without paying any attention to yourself, and in the sense that without taking it as a you know, that without considering any harm to your ego, if you just go and do it for him, that is also seva, that is also a service. So obeying the command of somebody who you respect is also a kind of seva. Seva also takes a different level in terms of behavioral act as well, where let's say you know that if I reply back, I know that what I know will hurt him, and if I say him, it will hurt him, and you just keep quiet. That is also a seva. You are trying to not hurt others so that he remains in convenient situation. That is also a seva.
Yeah, and, you know, it's so subtle, right? Like the behavioral aspect of seva. And I remember I was listening to a very important, a very, you know, specific speech on this very subject. And, what we learned from it was that, even if someone is shouting at you and you do not respond, just as you mentioned, then that is also a form of seva, because you are not allowing the negative energy to grow in that environment. And, when we start to think about these things like, positive and negative energy, the environment, I feel like at this point, some of the other aspects of the 4S framework really come to light as well. And I'd love to understand with you, VAG, like, how does Seva interact with, say, something like sadhana, where, sadhana, we attempt to become still and we attempt to become more aware of our environment. Would it be fair to say that the two work together to help us become a better sevak and a better sadhak at the same time?
Absolutely, Abhinavji. It goes hand in hand. It's just like the bus cannot progress without all the wheels working perfectly. All right. So seva is the shape through which the sadhana will progress. The sadhana, the vehicle of sadhana is seva. In another word, vehicle of sadhana, vehicle of meditation is seva. Only when you are in seva, your consciousness is more equipped to turn inward in meditation. Otherwise, you sit for meditation and you're trying to control your mind, but mind is attached to different subjects, so it will keep running. You have not done enough to detach yourself from the external subjects. That is where the seva come into play. In seva, when especially the seva that is defined in the context of Svarved, where it says obeying the commandment of the master is seva. Now the master may command you for the benevolent act. You are involved in serving somebody either by, let's say, awakening the wisdom within him, because he's just lost into the world, not knowing what will make him happy and where is the true source of happiness. So serving him by sharing the wisdom is also a seva, and you're doing it under the commandment of the master. So when you're doing it under the commandment of the master, you're not owning that act, but by doing that, you are developing even more gratitude for the master. You're building up your relationship with the master because you're working under his commandment all the time. Now this very relationship, this very gratitude for the master that develops within by being in the Sadguru Seva is the catalyst for meditation. So when you sit in meditation, imagine that you are a free bird. There's a high chance that you may get corrupted, because when you're free, anybody can corrupt you easily. But when you feel that no, somebody bigger is watching me, I am being watched, you will be little more careful. You'll behave well in front of somebody who you respect. So when you build this sense of gratitude for the master and you meditate within that canopy of gratitude, you always feel that my master is watching me. So you will always be better equipped to progress well undisturbed. The chances of corruption of your mind will reduce because of that gratitude for the master. And so the attachment that you have broken already will not disturb you anymore. You're not going to get corrupted again towards those attachments. Meditation will flourish. So meditation is based on the ship of seva. If you're not onboarded on the ship of seva, meditation has no way to progress after a certain length.
Yeah, and I think this explanation you've given how they both interrelate is just so important to understand for all of us, because I've also personally experienced where if I try to help someone over the course of a day, or I try to enact the commandments of the master over the course of a day, and then I sit down to practice meditation, I do personally find that I'm able to focus better. I'm able to get to that state of peace better. And it's so clearly defined, and it's so easily easy to experience as well. And you brought up a point which is gratitude, and I just wanted to dig into that a bit more, which was, if in the world today that we live in today, when we have time off, when we have a holiday, and we have a break, there's certain things people do for themselves. So, maybe someone likes music, maybe someone likes certain YouTuber, maybe someone likes certain movie, and they go and they do these things because it brings them happiness. But in the spiritual philosophy, as we proceed, we are encouraged to become sevaks, where we are being selfless. So we're not exactly doing things for ourselves. So a question which I think many of our listeners may have is, how do you stay happy in that state of existence? Is it possible to be happy, or are you just disconnected? What is that? What does that feel like?
This is wonderful question. This can be clearly understood by a very simple example. I like that example because that clearly define where the happiness is. So for example, there are two people who are sitting in front of you, one thirsty, one not thirsty. You offer a glass of water to both of them. Both drinks water, but one feel happy about it because he was thirsty for it. The other fellow did not like it. Why? It simply means that the happiness was never in the water. If the happiness was in the water, then both the fellow who got the same water, both should have felt the same amount of happiness. It simply means that happiness actually is very inside you. What you seek from outside is the trigger which will ignite that happiness within you. Different people have different triggers based on what hobby they like, but there could be some mechanism through which you can tap the absolute happiness without any trigger, because it is just very inside you. Every time you get happy, the happiness blossom from within you. So happiness is already within you. It's just that we do not know how to tap it, how to keep it blossomed all the time without the need of any trigger. This is where the the spiritual practices, the different four pillars of Swarved that we are discussing in this series, come handy to make you connect to the happiness without being dependent on anything else.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful example. Like, it's such a good example. And I, yeah, like, the way you've explained it is just so, I think, important for us all to take away from today, which is that there is this, this distillery of happiness somewhere inside of us. And, as you mentioned, the way we interact with the world today, when we have a trigger, a certain droplet of from that distillery comes forward and gives us a sense of happiness. But if we can just become one with that distillery, which the spiritual masters are trying guide us on, then things can be so much better. We don't need the external world can be in any state, but our internal state will be unchanged. It will be consistent. And it's a very comforting feeling to know that that is possible when you look at the world and it's constantly changing. And I'd like to end VAG on one question, which is, we've heard about Seva, what it is, and what effect it has on our spiritual journey. What would you say to our listeners who are trying to understand and trying to enact Seva in their lives? Like, what can we take away from our discussion today and start doing straight away? Is it as simple as speaking to a person you respect more kindly? What can we do from today itself?
It is, oh, yeah, at least it depends on the level of the people actually. If somebody who really feel that I'm very restless and I really want to, equip myself to be more efficient in my life. So what kind of seva can I do to do that aspect? I would say that if there is any bad habits that that particular fellow has, which he knows that is very selfish in nature, that I look only for my benefit because of that habit. Something like, let's say, you and your spouse, you wake up in the morning, and just because you're lazy every time, you are asking your wife to do certain things just because of your laziness. So start from there. Pick one or the other habit which is harming for others. Well, if not harming, at least it is not good for you. So start leaving those habits. The seva begins from there. Let's spread the convenience to others, whether be it your spouse, be it your child, be it anybody in your family. Start from there. Let them feel that now you are being a help for them, not a burden for them.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Virji. I think you've brought forward so many important points. And I think, I really hope that our listeners today are able to take away exactly what you mentioned, which is to start small and to go deeper. So thank you so much for joining us today, Virji. I really hope we're able to, have another conversation very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Virji. So we've reached toward the end of our Q&A session. I do want to apologize to Leelaji, who wasn't able to join us today. It was an unfortunate consequence, but we will absolutely be pulling her in next week because we want to hear from her and her experience as well. But for this week, let's go towards our Shanti part and then summarize what we've learned today.
विराग त्याग की शांति हो, उदासीनता शांति, सेवा जित शिष्य शांति हो, सत्य शांति हो शांति। हे प्रभु शांति स्वरूप हो, शांति शांतिमय शांति, शांति शांति जन शांति हो, पूर्ण शांतिमय शांति। हे प्रभु शांति प्रदान कर, दूर हो सर्व अशांति, देव सदा फल शांति में, शांति शांति सुख शांति। हे प्रभु शांति प्रदान कर, दूर हो सर्व अशांति, देव सदा फल शांति में, शांति शांति सुख शांति।
So with that, we've come toward the end of another week on the Vihangam Yoga Global Online Satsang. I think today was a very enlightening discussion with Vijayji, and of course, I will be continuing this with Leelaji and our other speakers next week. But I think the most key thing that we can all take away today is that, spirituality, as complex as people think it is, it's very, it is the art of simplicity and the lifestyle of simplicity. And seva, you can think of it as I need to earn billions of dollars and give it away. Or as Vijayji put it near the end, it can be as simple as looking at your life and saying, there are these things which I know are harmful or aren't bringing positivity to my environment, whether it be to your own self or the people around you. And seva is this appreciation and this recognition that there are certain things like that, and it's taking the pledge that you want to change that. And the simpler we make it, the easier it becomes, and the easier it becomes, the easier it is to go deeper and deeper and to become more subtle with this science of spirituality and Vihangam Yoga. So, I hope you've all been able to take something away today. And, if you have any questions or thoughts you want to share, please do get in touch with us on our WhatsApp number, which is coming on the screen now, and on slido.com/VIGOS. Even if it's during the week, please do get involved and get in touch with us. We will definitely pick it up the coming week. So thank you everyone for joining us, and let's reconvene again in a week's time. So thank you everyone. Have a great week. Jai Suludev. See you next time.